Well, hello, it's Richard Pearce from FinextraTV, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Patrick Sheehan. Hello, Patrick.
Hi, nice to see you.
Great to see you. So Patrick is the founder and managing partner of ETF Partners, Environmental Technologies Fund, Europe's original sustainability VC firm. 20 years ETF Partners have been around, a leading position in promoting sustainability through innovation, which is absolutely everything that we focus on at SF Live. And you've been involved for many years in investment across tech cycles. You've got a wealth of experience in this space. So privilege and honor that you could spend time with us today. Tell us really, I suppose, a bit about ETF Partners, purpose, mission, why you founded them.
I would be happy to. So we founded the business nearly 20 years ago now, as you said. And the story actually is I'd just come back from California, where I had been doing venture capital, and wanted to move on from a bigger firm to do my own thing. But I believed in climate change. I believed it was real. We moved constant thinking about our kids' future and where they would fit in. And I did think, what am I going to tell my kids if I believed in climate change and did nothing? And then it sort of slowly dawned on me that venture capital needed to be used to fund the innovations that would address climate change. And so, to cut a long story short, we decided to found a firm in an area that didn't exist. It actually oddly made it probably easier to start the firm because we had no competition, but we did have to have a compelling, simple narrative as to why this was important, which we thought we had 20 years ago, and I think we were probably 10 or 15 years ahead of our time. But today, I guess it's obvious to everybody.
So it was needed in 2006 because there was nothing, and you expand on that for us. You were seeing, were you, innovations that you thought could help address climate change, but there was nobody financing them? Was that basically the genesis of the idea?
Actually, it's sort of the other way around. We saw the needs, and we believed there would be the innovations, and as we looked around, we began to see them, but there were no firms dedicated to this. Actually, around the time the word clean tech started to appear and it started to happen, but that was, at best in parallel with what we were doing. It just seemed so obvious that innovation would be required to meet the challenges, and I think that's proven to be the case. But when we started, people would say to us, "Oh, it's a charity then, is it?" And we had to explain, "No, this is, these tremendous needs will require new industries, new technologies, and that actually represents great investment opportunity." Not in a selfish way. That's hopefully the way capitalism should work.
Yeah. And I sort of feel as though you're kind of answering the next adjunct to this, which is that's what was needed then. Why is it still needed now? And is it very different in the shape and size, or would you just say the scale and so forth has changed?
Well, I think it certainly is still needed now. I think it's recognised now. So sustainability. When we created this slogan, sustainability through innovation, to try and summarize all those long words I've been using, we had to think about each word, right? Sustainability wasn't a terribly well known or well used word. Now it is, right? So there's been great change, and now climate tech is a nice bit of jargon in venture capital, where people say this is a really hot area of investment. So yes, there's been a ton of change, and is it enough? No, because actually there's enormous need, and the sense of urgency, to my mind, has just grown. So if I think back 20 years, I'm surprised it's taken this long, and I feel we have an enormous amount more to do. But I'm also encouraged because today we see great entrepreneurs applying themselves with a real passion into this area. We see really exciting innovations, and so actually we see a far greater rate of change now than I had anticipated. But it's just taken a long while for that flywheel to get going.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's give people an example of what we're talking about in terms of innovation around climate and climate tech, in case they can't quite figure out where we're coming from. So one of the companies that you're invested in is Open Cosmos. which is space Earth observation. We did a lot on that in our last Sustainable Finance Live, but tell us a bit more. Who are they? What do they do? Why were you excited about them to invest in them?
So Open Cosmos is a UK-based company that operates now all around Europe, building satellites and operating satellites and providing data for Earth observation. And why that's important, you have to see the Earth to be able to appraise it, to judge it, to be able to have impact on it. And really one of the only viable ways of getting a holistic view is to look at it from space, at its simplest. That may sound a bit conceptual. There's also the why now, and we've been looking at the space industry for years. Actually, if you go back in time, before I ever started in venture capital, I did a PhD in electronics around satellite antennas, so got a bit of a passion for it. But we waited patiently to find really viable opportunity, and that's happening now, because the economics of space have fundamentally changed. It's become much cheaper to put things in space, and that's opening up a huge range of commercial opportunities, and typically in communications, etc., but also in Earth observation. And so only in the past few years has this opportunity really emerged. And when we found Open Cosmos, we were delighted to also find, I think, a great entrepreneur who set up a business in a frugal yet very ambitious manner, and that combination is as delightful as it is rare. And so we became an enthusiastic supporter, and we invested in the company. We pulled behind us the total of about $50 million, and the company is now really addressing important issues and growing very fast. And so it's early days. We only invested about 18 months ago, but actually I think it can make a big difference.
Right. So let's expand on that. So when you're looking, I think you're sort of Series B and up, is that right?
Well, I don't normally quote those Series A, B, whatever, because I think they're easy to have much meaning, and if it's confusing for me, it's probably confusing for everybody.
Fair enough. Give us your clarity.
We talk about investing when there's revenue and customers, and the companies are scaling or beginning to scale. And then we'll typically invest from our own funds about 5 or 10 million, but often investors will follow us into these companies.
Right. So, and what are you looking for? If people are sitting here going, okay, this sounds like the sort of organisation. What are you looking for? You've given us a clue there on Open Cosmos in your description, but maybe give us a bit more detail.
So more generally, we're looking for companies with exciting innovations that are, for us, already up and running, and there's some traction, as we would say, some sales, where we've got people we think will do a great job, who we will be well aligned with, and where we, by investing, can help make a big difference. And within that, we focus very much on what I would call now the intelligence layer that enables modern infrastructure. And if that's a new phrase, it's because it is. We coined it, and we coined it to try and encapsulate this idea that investing in digital technologies that have real meaning and application in the real world have to have profound impact. And they have impact very rapidly because we can scale digital technologies very rapidly. And so there's a lovely coincidence of the ability to create valuable companies rapidly, which our investors love. They love impact, but they also love the companies growing rapidly in value. And because that's happening, having impact very, very rapidly. And if I go on for a moment, clearly there's a climate emergency. We need to act fast, and the ability to have rapid impact is I think, very, very attractive.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's reverse that. What should such companies as you've been describing be looking for in their investors? I know, this is something that's probably quite passionate to you. You're quite passionate about as well. What would you recommend people look out for in terms of the characteristics, let's just say, of their investors?
Well, there's a lot of people investing in what's called climate tech these days. And it's not a phrase I particularly like, by the way, because we invest across a range of environmental technologies. Um, but I think it's about getting on with people and people who can roll with the punches. We invest in young companies. Things go wrong. Things go off plan. And how people react in adversity is pretty critical. So I think actually, if I were picking an investor myself, I would pick someone I thought I'd get on with, who would be reliable and calm in the face of crisis, but who also had knowledge from experience, who'd seen the movie before, who could help with contacts. Um, but over and above everything, I would take a bit of time to get to know them and reference them. We actually spend a lot of time checking and referencing the people we're going to invest in and support. People should do the same. So if you have the luxury of doing so, I would spend time because as a wise old venture capitalist once said to me years ago, he said, venture capital, it's not like marriage, it's for life. Don't get rid of your
I was
investors.
going to say
Get on with
it's
them.
like I was going to say it's like a marriage, but you've yes, there's a sort of bitter twist to that. But yeah, interesting. Okay, let's move on a little bit and think about the bigger picture. So, when we hear about the COPs, we've just done a series of interviews on people coming back from those. And if we look at the Nature COP in Cali this year, there's this financing gap. There's always a financing gap. And it doesn't matter what the number is, it's always a big number. There's always talk of public-private money. What are in your view, with your historical view and looking forward, what's stopping this public-private capital getting together at a scale that gets us towards the sort of positive outcomes on climate and nature that we obviously are both passionate about?
So I'll give you my thoughts on that subject, but with a caveat at the start that I'm not an expert on this particular area of deployment of capital through such large scale structures.
Well,
But
I'm sure your perspective would be interesting.
yeah, from my experience of backing people who want to get things done and are taking risks to do it, I think there's a couple of things which strike me as not often talked about but important. So I'll just highlight those two. One is that actually when people start to talk about the money, even if they're arguing, you at least know it's for real, right? And so actually the fact that people are arguing about the money, I take as a sign of progress, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Not the
That's
reason
a
for pessimism.
constructive
I think this is where the rubber's meeting the road. Good. First thought. My second thought, though, is I think it becomes rapidly critically important to have the right governance structures around all this, because it's and I think this is one of the things that hinders that deployment, because it's not just about splashing money, it's about things being made to happen efficiently and effectively with good oversight, and deploying money at this scale in new ways I think requires very thoughtful governance, and maybe even governance structures we don't have yet. And so I think that's a subject which needs a lot of thought, and I suspect somewhere under the hood there is a real reason, there's a real cause of delay.
Yeah, I mean, if there is an emergency, and I suppose my thought is yes, we need governance, but if we spend a lot of time thinking about governance, which seems to go on, one heck of a lot, we don't actually get any impact done. Is there a way that, there's a lot of committees, a lot of talking. I sit through them. Is there a way where things like Open Cosmos and this sort of satellite observation technology you spoke about can be sort of rolled into that governance? We've got an eye in the sky that can see whether the capital was deployed on the project to move from the baseline to the KPI, can't we?
No, indeed, that the visibility really helps with accountability and therefore with governance. But so absolutely is the short answer. You still need to report to somebody, and in simple language. Perhaps I'll add a third thing there, which a pet point. We need to try and retain very simple language, I think, and there's almost an industry of acronyms being created, which, to your earlier comment, I think will slow us down and confuse us. So I'm a big fan, honestly, of trying to communicate, at least in very simple, clear language about the outcomes required and the needs, and and hence my comments actually about simple governance.
Yeah. So if we look forward again, so thinking, as I said in our pre-conversation, I spoke with Jessica Smith, from UNEP FI, and she and others I've heard saying, well, look, we're talking about this money that's the gap, the climate gap, the nature gap for financing, which we've started to discuss, but actually, the bigger issue is really just the bigger economy, which is completely designed either to ignore the externalities, or it's incentivized to actually damage nature, etc. It's a big existential sort of question, but what are your thoughts on how we change some of those perversities, I believe the term is.
I'll give you a couple of thoughts. Firstly, is to say that impact investing isn't a separate little universe in my mind that exists apart from what Jessica's talking about. It actually, impact just means purpose or intentionality, right? And so it's a methodology and way of seeing things that we should try and apply everywhere, in my mind. And so long as we can speak simply about it, we have a chance of doing that. Um, um, but of course, yes, we need the whole world to change. We need to probably reframe the existing subsidies for old industries, for the oil industry. It makes if I go out on a limb, makes absolutely no sense to me to maintain subsidies for the old energy sectors, be they oil or gas, rather than the new energy sectors which we're trying to promote. And so there's a lot of room for improvement in the subsidy and legislative regimes that will make things easier. But so much needs to change, right? It's the structures, there's governance, attitudes and behaviours. But my particular focus, of course, is on enabling new technologies which can have a profound and rapid impact. And we can't focus on everything, so I focus on that one thing.
Yeah, and I very much, if you like, it was worth exploring that, because I think you can get lost in the sort of total system of way, humans impact through all sorts of methods, and get lost in that, and you don't know what to do. And whereas if you do, I think what you've chosen is to say, okay, here is an innovation, which I believe an innovation can scale, and the scale will show people that there's money to be made as well as impact to be made. Therefore, we can, create an example and multiply that. And that'll get ahead of standards and processes and everything else quite often, as innovation does. Am I summarising your sort of theory there?
I think that's so. Yes, in short, I think people typically underestimate the power of technology to change things, but when you look back over a decade, you can see often enormous change. When we started our business nearly 20 years ago, as I said, solar wasn't really economically viable, and I remember going around telling people that, well, hold on, the cost is coming down rapidly, and so there'll be this tipping point when it's really, really attractive, and people will just roll it out. And there was a kind of yeah, well, maybe sort of general reaction, but today, that's happening because it's economically the most sensible choice, right? So we have reached that tipping point. And by the way, the cost of solar is still coming down very rapidly, and it will. So if I was fanciful, I'd say we'll reach a point where it's pretty much free, right? And again, I say that to startle, because people will say that's obviously nonsense, but it's coming down 25% or by a quarter every year on average, right? So we will reach a point where that new technology is not just mainstream but takes over, right? So technology over a decade or so has incredible transformative power, and that's one of the things we really need to see to address this problem. But to your point, it's not the only thing, and I really wouldn't want to get into a debate about we should do A but not B. Frankly, in an emergency, let's do everything, right?
Yeah, yeah. But I think there's that, you can start to reduce things, can't you? If you look at the sort of, whatever biodiversity hotspots as an example, then you look at the supply chains and the jurisdictions, and then you apply the technologies, these new ones you've described, to those, let's say top 10 hotspots, top 10 supply chains, and top 10 companies. You start to actually be able to kind of get a grip on the problem, don't you? In a sense, in amongst the seemingly massive opacity of everything.
Exactly. And I think it's important to be very optimistic as we address these challenges. And because I think, well, I'll put it this way: I was at a very fancy lunch in one of those tall towers in Canary Wharf just recently, where a lot of really smart people were talking about all these problems, and they had a great analysis of all of the problems. And I got a bit fidgety, because I didn't hear many solutions, just problems. So I went talking about optimists and the fact that optimists are the people who make things happen and change the world, and they are often entrepreneurs and often in small companies. But actually, getting out and doing stuff is really important.
No, absolutely. No, I love that, and I very much myself get a bit fidgety as well. So tell us, as you look forward, we're moving into a different sort of political climate. There's good, there's bad, but then we reduce back to ETF Partners and what you're doing and what you're excited about, what you're going to focus on. Can you give us a sense of your years ahead?
Sure. Well, after 20 years, I still feel we're just starting and we have a lot to do. So I'm not at all satisfied that we've done enough yet, and we feel a kind of huge sense of mission to make a difference. That might sound a bit trite, but actually it's real, and it drives us. And I'm even more excited about the ability to deploy some of these new technologies, ranging from real-world applications of AI that make a difference to efficiency, through to satellite communications, through to the implications of very cheap energy, and through to very cheap computing power and storage. And you put all this together, and you can start to see quite a different and exciting world potentially emerging, and that keeps us very busy. As I say, we try to encapsulate all of that into this phrase, the intelligence layer that enables modern infrastructure, because I think it's for want of having a simple expression. But I think that's where we will be focusing, and that's where I think we can expect to make a difference, actually.
Yeah, well, it is so interesting. Last night. I went to the sort of the Microsoft alumni Christmas party. Not nowhere swanky, just a pub in Reading, but talking to people who 30 years ago we thought we'd seen it all in technology. And we had no idea that we were at the beginning of something. But it was this combination of many things. Mobile phones, telephony, cloud, cheaper. Processing, all those sort of factors, nexus of forces that you spoke about, that's taken us to the world where we are today. So I think you're right to say it's a nexus of forces. We're at the beginning of it, and if we can make sure we constructively use those things, would you say that combination will really lead us into some positive outcomes over the next few years?
Well, as an optimist, I would hope so. I think it has the potential to, and I think we need to try and take advantage of those opportunities and not be ruled by fear of change, which it happens and is fair. But we also have to try and ensure that the transitions we're facing are just and fair and work for everybody, and not just for the technologists who are smart or brash enough to grab them. And so I personally think it's important to try and make a difference that makes the world better, right? And the lovely thing about our business over the years is that when we started, I was quite shy about saying that because it's not very kind of financial, and it actually would put investors off a little bit. But today, it's attractive and people like it, and a lot of entrepreneurs like to deal with us because they say, well, we share your values, that you share our values, right? This is actually just better business now, and I feel really encouraged by the by that sort of trend of purpose in business.
Absolutely, and I think that's a beautiful point on which to end. So, Patrick, thanks for sharing those thoughts with us. We'll put details of how people can get in touch with you. But for now, thank you.
Thank you.